This is a video about how to achieve your writing goals in the next year.
In the last few months, I've been doing quite a few writing sessions with my friend Herne, who has just started out on his writing journey. And he recently asked me what he should be doing over the next 12 months to kind of level up with his writing and hopefully get something published by the end of the year. And it made me realize that there's probably a lot of you that are in a similar situation to my friend. You're thinking, how can I achieve my writing goals this year? How can I maybe get published by the end of the year? Or at the very least, how can I kind of improve and level up as a writer? So in this video, I'm going to be giving you a 4-step plan, which I believe if you follow it for 12 months, will put you ahead of 99% of other aspiring writers out there. And will give you a very, very good possibility of having something published by the end of this year. So before I get into these 4 steps, I think it's important that you know where I'm at with my writing career currently so that you know where this advice is coming from. I started writing when I was 15, I'm turning 25 this year, so this will be 10 years of writing, but it's only really in the last couple of years that my writing has gotten good enough to start getting stuff published. I've published 3 fantasy novels, and I also have an interactive fiction video game that I wrote, which has sold over 10,000 copies. And writing is not at the point where it produces a full-time income for me, but it does produce a very nice sort of monthly revenue stream that allows me to only work 3 days a week at my current day job, which is really awesome. So that's where I'm at with my writing right now. Let's get into those 4 steps to help you really accelerate your writing progress this year. So the thing that underpins these 4 steps that I'm about to present is the idea that you want to focus on systems over goals. In his excellent book, How to Fail at Almost Everything and Still Win Big, Scott Adams, the creator of Dilbert, basically talks about how goals are in a way for losers. And the reason for that is that when you are just operating on a goal-oriented mindset, you are existing in a perpetual state of failure until you achieve that goal, which is really demotivating. So if your goal is I want to become a published author, then you're going to live in a perpetual state of failure until that goal is achieved. On the other hand, systems are things that you're doing repeatedly to achieve a goal. So a system in the case of writing might be something like saying, I'm going to write every day and I'm going to read books every day. Now, the benefit of a system mindset over a goal mindset is that you win every time you execute on your system. So as he says in the book, people with a systems mindset tend to be way more happier and more fulfilled, and as a result, they stay in the game longer and they're actually more likely to achieve their goals. So what I'm about to give you is a 4-step process that actually combines into a writing system, because the goal is not just to write a book or to publish a book. The goal is to become a writer, someone for whom writing is an effortless part of their identity, and it's just something that you can do every day without thinking, in the same way that you brush your teeth and you don't have to think about it. So step number 1 is to shorten your feedback loop. When I was starting out as a writer, I basically spent the first couple of years just working on the same novel over and over again, getting very, very little feedback. There were maybe a few times where I would show small sections to friends, but I really wasn't putting my work out there in a way that allowed me to learn from it, to see what I was doing wrong, to see what I was doing right, and then to improve the next time. What I would actually recommend is that for you right now, you're probably better off actually spending your time writing short stories for the next couple of months. The reason for this is that you can compress the feedback loop from 2 years of writing a novel down to 2 weeks. You can write a short story in a week. Maybe it's just 2,000, 3,000 words, totally good. You can send it off to a friend to get a critique, and then you can get that feedback, you can actually incorporate it into your writing, and you can learn from your mistakes. You're creating this really tight feedback loop where you are producing something, getting feedback on it, improving, and then you're just going in this circle again and again and again. That's not what I had in my first couple of years of writing. I was writing this thing in isolation. I wasn't really getting a lot of feedback on it. So my writing really leveled up once I actually did start writing a couple of short stories and once I did start getting feedback on my work. So what I would recommend for the next 12 months is that you just block out the next 3 months or so. This is only if you're not already in the middle of a novel project. If you are, continue with the novel, get that done. But if you're at the point right now where you're sort of starting from scratch, I would recommend that you try to write 6 short stories over the next 3 months. So 1 week for writing the first draft of these stories, send it off to someone to give feedback, and then another week to incorporate that feedback and improve your writing. Now, you might be thinking right now, Jed, I don't actually have anyone who will give feedback on this stuff, or maybe I'm scared to give it to my friends. That's okay. I was actually kind of in a similar position when I was starting out, and I came across a really good website called Critique Circle. They're not sponsoring this video or anything. I wish they were, because I really, really liked their website when I was starting out. Basically how it works is you can put up bits of your writing. It tends to work best for stuff that's maybe 2,000 to 4,000 words, stuff that's kind of short. So you put your writing up in Critique Circle, you critique other people's work to get credits, and then you can spend those credits to get people to actually give feedback on your writing. It's a really, really useful website. I used it for a couple of years when I was just sort of really starting to take my writing seriously. And in fact, my very first published novel, Fires of the Dead, I actually put up the first couple of chapters on Critique Circle to get feedback on that. way back in, I think, 2019 or so. And the feedback was really, really useful. Once you have sort of gotten to a point where you've done your 6 short stories, that's the stage where I would start suggesting that if you do want to write novels, that is where you move towards, because realistically, novels are much, much, much more appealing to readers to pick up, and they're easy to sell, and that's where most people actually make a career from. I don't really know anyone who makes a career from writing short stories. I know tons of authors who do make a career from writing novels. But short stories are a really good place to start, to just get that quick feedback loop to level up your writing efficiently. So step number 2 in the 4-step process is to make your writing a daily habit. Now, the reason why you want it to be a daily habit is, again, you want that systems mindset of every day executing on your system so that you get the satisfaction of moving towards your goal. You want writing to be at the point where it is effortless to you, where you don't have to think about showering, you don't have to think about brushing your teeth, and you don't have to think about writing. It's just something that happens each day as part of a daily habit. Personally, I find that 50% of the difficulty of writing is just getting the first word typed down. So that's why it's so important to just get this daily habit in place so that you've already eliminated half of the difficulty of writing each day. I also find that I'm much more likely to be immersed in the world of my story and to actually produce better writing if I am writing every day, because the world just stays in my head in between sessions. I don't have to struggle to get back into it. It just becomes part of my sort of subconscious thinking. When it comes to actually developing your daily writing habit, there's sort of 3 ideas that I would suggest for that. The first is to try writing at different times of day to see when your energy levels and your creativity is best. Some people are really good first thing in the morning, so you might be better off getting up early before work. Other people are more night owls who are better off writing at night when everyone else in the house is maybe asleep. Whatever it is, try to find the energy slot where you are the most productive. The second idea is to lower the threshold of difficulty. So if you're not able to stick with the daily writing habit, it's probably because you're putting too much pressure on yourself to write for 2 hours every day. You're better off lowering it to the point where it's something that you can do 95% of the time, even if that's only 50 words per day. And then once you've got that 50 words per day sorted, that's when you can slowly start ramping up the difficulty. Attendance is the thing you should be optimizing for first. And then lastly, the third idea is that you should be tracking your word count each day. This is something I've been doing since 2019. And the reason why you want to be tracking your word count each day is because it really helps you maintain momentum, and it actually gamifies the writing experience. It feels like you're leveling up a character in a video game. Jerry Seinfeld has talked about this with his own writing methods. He says that every day he writes, he basically has a big calendar and he'll put a big red X through the day if he successfully wrote. And the idea is simply to not break the chain. I know that Brandon Sanderson as well has talked about this exact same method, and I find it very, very useful for keeping me accountable and for generating momentum when I'm working on a project. I've actually linked to my word tracking template down in the description below if you want to check that out, but you can also create your own template as well. Step number 3 is to seek rejection. What do I mean by that? Well, with those short stories that you're spending the next couple of months writing, what I would suggest doing is going onto the Submission Grinder, which is a website that basically lists out online magazines and publications that will publish short stories, and just submitting to as many of them as you can. Now, the important thing here is you're not doing this with the expectation of these publications saying yes, publishing your work, and paying you heaps of money. First of all, short story publications pay you very, very little. And second of all, you are probably going to be rejected from these things. And that's actually a good thing. The reason I say that is because writing is an extremely difficult task, and it's incumbent upon you to really callous yourself against rejection so that you can know that no matter how much adversity you face as an author, you're always going to have a thick enough skin to continue moving on because you genuinely love the craft and you're not doing this for the external validation of getting published or making money from it, but rather you're doing it for the only reason that will keep you in the game long enough to be successful. And that is because you love the process of writing stories. So for me, there was a 3-year period where this is what I was sort of doing. In between working on novel projects, I would write a couple of short stories and I would send them off to these different sci-fi and fantasy publications. I think I sent off over 80 submissions during this period, and there were only about 4 or 5 publications that actually came out of it. But it was still a really valuable practice to make me realize, look, it doesn't matter how many rejections I'm getting from these places, I'm still gonna write because I really, really love it. And I think it's important for new writers to go through that crucible so that you know that you're doing this for the right reason. While you're sending these submissions off, it's so important that you are actually working on a different project. You don't wanna just be in a position where you have written something, you send it off, and then you just wait there. That's really, really demotivating. You're gonna write stuff, send it off, and already be writing the next thing so that when the rejection comes in, you just don't care because you're already working on the next project. And then as a side benefit, if you actually do happen to get published, it can be an amazing morale boost that actually shows that you are progressing as a writer. So for me, the very first money I ever made from writing was when I sent my short story, A Clockwork Prison, to The Arcanist, and they accepted it. It was under 1,000 words. They paid me $50 for it. And I remember sitting in my friend's apartment in Tokyo in 2018, just feeling like so excited that someone had actually paid me money for my writing. So that is a nice side benefit that can come from this that can be very motivating. Don't rely on it. Remember, the reason why you're doing this is to embrace rejection and to push through it so that you can become stronger and a better writer on the other side. And then lastly, step number 4 in this 12-month writing system is to study the craft. It's really important that if you want to write within a certain genre, you understand why certain books are succeeding in this genre and why certain books aren't succeeding. So if you write fantasy books like I do, you really want to understand like what is it that is separating the really successful authors from the authors who aren't getting much traction. You should be reading consistently in the same way that you're making your writing a daily habit. I would really suggest having a daily reading habit as well. For me, I think a good balance, I would suggest a balance of trying to develop a 60-minute daily writing habit and then a 30-minute reading habit. 90 minutes is relatively easy to carve out of most people's days. Just like stop watching TV and actually spend that time on something that's going to make you happy and fulfilled in the long term. And the idea here is to not just steal exactly what these successful writers in your genre are doing, but rather to see what is it that readers are resonating with that I also would enjoy exploring. So for example, my current book is called Kingdom of Dragons. I'm editing the second draft now. This is a dragon rider fantasy set in a magical school. So while I was thinking about writing this book, I was looking at all the successful dragon rider fantasy books out there, and I was asking myself, like, what are the scenes that readers always love in these books that I also really enjoy and that I would want to write as well? One of the scenes that came to mind is the classic scene where the rider and the dragon fly together for the first time. That's in pretty much every dragon rider fantasy book, and I really love it. There's just something so special and so freeing and amazing about those scenes. So armed with that information, I was able to ask myself, what is the best possible version of these scenes? How could I write something that does this scene better than any other book out there? Along with reading books within your genre, which is an absolute must, I also would suggest taking some time to study the craft of writing. So whether that is watching writing advice videos like this or reading different writing advice books, I think there's a lot of benefit to this. I would say that you do want to make sure this doesn't distract you from actually writing. It's important that you have developed your daily writing habit and your daily reading habit first. And then once you've got those two pieces, that's when you can start to add on some additional learning about the craft of writing as well. I've actually put together a free book called 5 Lessons That Transform My Writing, which you can check out for free using the link in the description down below. So that can be a good place to start when it comes to checking out writing craft books. And at some point coming up, I will probably do some videos talking about my favorite writing advice books. So if you want to check those out, make sure you're subscribed. And that's it. Those are the 4 steps that I would suggest following over the next 12 months if you are a new writer who really wants to be ahead of 99% of the other aspiring writers out there. Shorten your feedback loop by writing short stories. Make writing a daily habit. Seek rejection by submitting your short stories to online magazines and publications, and then make a study of the craft. If you can consistently execute on those 4 steps over the next 12 months, I'm extremely confident that you will be so far ahead of the other aspiring writers out there by the end of the year. And I think there's a really good chance that you'll be published by then as well. But having said that, the important thing here is to remember that writing is a long game. Like I said, I've been doing this for almost 10 years, and it's really easy to overestimate what you can actually accomplish in 1 year, but it's also incredibly easy to underestimate what you can accomplish in 5 or 10 years. So focus on the system, focus on executing that each day, and remember, it's the long game. And the longer you can stick with it, the greater the rewards are that you'll see. Thanks for watching. I'll be back next week with a video talking about how much money I made in 2022 as a fantasy writer.